Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, February 27, 2019. We're here in the Freeport High School Library. Candy will not be with us this evening. She is out of town, and we're hoping Erica and John are along shortly. So we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I was in a third grade class last week. No, that was vacation. The week before, doing a JA class, and they were clearly just doing something about the Pledge of Allegiance because they were all giving me statistics and facts about the Pledge of Allegiance. And this part got added at this point in time, and this one was very interesting. So anyway, just made me think of it doing the pledge. Consideration of minutes. I would take a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the February 6, 2019 and February 13th, 2019.
Presentation until the next.
About our agenda, like things are just falling right off. Okay, good news and recognition report from our student rep. Clay is with us this evening.
How's it going, everyone? So for academics at Freeport High, the Freeport Latin Club will be hosting a Junior Classical League Winter Convention for the first time in many years. And our Latin teacher, Miss Taylor's very, very excited about that. And students are also preparing for the state-funded SATs that will happen in mid-April. In the athletic department, last night, students and parents gathered for what they called the demystifying of the NCAA recruiting process, and in which both D1 and D3 coaches spoke, along with Nina Davenport, which was a former Freeport basketball star, and she spoke on her collegiate sport career at Bates, and thank you, Mr. Wagner, for that. And tonight, and the come what they can do on the stage, and that's our update.
Okay, and anyone who didn't see it, the Freeport girls basketball team made it to the Southern Regional Finals last weekend, and I heard they had a great run down in Portland last week, and unfortunately they didn't quite pull it off in the end, but it's tough when you're going up against the #1 seed. So super proud of them for making as far as they did. And I hear not one senior on the team to graduate, so they should be a powerhouse next year. Very exciting. Anyway, sorry. Public comment. There was my public comment. If we have anyone in the audience who'd like to share, we just ask that you come up to the microphone, tell us who you are, where you're from. Okay. So we will move right on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder to the board that your next opportunity for a learning walkthrough is at Pownell Elementary School on March 6th, quickly followed by an opportunity the next day at the Mass Landing School. Please contact Lisa or Emily if you're planning on attending those events. The focus at PES will be on a staff share at a staff meeting, and I think on the PLC format at Mass Landing. There's also still time for board members and community members and staff members to sign up for the Sustainability Committee. The deadline is tomorrow, but that gives you plenty of time between now and then. And our initial meeting will be held on April the 2nd after the board appoints the members at the March 13th board meeting. And I did love seeing our girls varsity basketball team play in the regional finals at the Civic Center. And although they did lose to Gray, they played hard, and it was just a great game to be at. And they will be coming back strong next year. On March 6th, the Strategic Planning Committee will reconvene to review the feedback from the survey sent out to the staff and from the staff focus group that met recently. And this will begin our process of developing the more detailed strategic plan now that we have adopted our new mission and vision statement. And now that we're part of the Greater Sebago Education Alliance, and they call themselves GC, GSEA, it took me a while to catch on to that. Cynthia met, I think today, with the planning group that we will be working on the creation of the Leadership Academy, supporting our leaders and aspiring leaders. And also in April, there will be a planning for professional development opportunities for those smaller subgroups that I talked about, like PE, music, art, to get together, those teachers to get together across those 10 schools that are represented. We have an additional staff member retiring at the end of the year. I'm sad to report that Sue Allen, a secretary here at Freeport High School, will be retiring at the end of the year. And I also have 2 resignations to report. Darren Carter as the assistant principal. Right, no, you can't do 2, which you approved for the phys ed position last time. And then also Jim Donahue is resigning as the PE teacher at Pownell Elementary School. And then the highlight of my day today was eating lunch at Mass Landing. We have our 2 cooks right here in the audience, Deanna and Dorothy, and Aaron Dow, their supervisor, where the menu was created and voted on by the students. We had lasagna, breadsticks, Caesar salad, and ice cream for dessert. It was delicious. And then after lunch, there was a 5 minutes of dancing in the classrooms because they had their principal of the day at the school today, which was a student. And I almost learned how to do the floss by some of the students. And
Are you gonna show us?
well, I'm not, because I tried to show I tried to show Cynthia right before the board meeting, and she notified me on the 1 to 4 rubric that I'm a 1+. So I'll keep having her tutor me, and maybe at a future time I'll show the board my moves. But it never hurts to add a few moves to your dance card. So anyway, that concludes my report.
That's just something to look forward to.
Yeah.
That's right.
Past the budget.
Yeah. Okay, so administrator reports. The only administrator report we have for today is finance from Michelle.
It's hard to follow that act. No, I cannot floss. Sorry. So the purple sheet is the finance sheet in there. I'll make this quick like I always do. Compared to last year at this time, we're about 1.2% higher with amounts left, but it looks like it's due to encumbrances. So we had about 300,000 more in encumbrances last year at this time than we do now, so it's really just a timing, right? So we put in encumbrances earlier in the year for things that we're not buying until May, and we don't have as many of those encumbrances this year. It doesn't mean that we won't spend it. It just means that we're not putting it in the system at the moment. So I think it's just a timing error. There's nothing that's coming out that is concerning to me, and there's nothing in the future that I'm hearing about that says, oh my gosh, we should be on the lookout for whatever. So I don't anticipate us coming in any different than where we did last year by the end of this year.
Any questions for Michelle? Okay, thank you. Okay, board comments and committee reports, board information exchange and agenda requests. Maura?
So I wanted to share, with the board and the public who might be interested. There's an opportunity coming up for, let me make sure that I read this correctly, a youth conference, an LGBTQ youth conference hosted by Equality Maine. It's going to be Friday, March 8th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at UNE in Biddeford. So I'll be attending. It's for educators, students, parents, as well as other adults who are interested. And it's described as a day of youth, families, educators, and other professionals coming together to have a dialogue on how we can elevate LGBTQ plus youth. So I just wanted to invite you to join me. If you're interested, I can forward you a link with more information.
Okay. You said next Friday?
Yeah.
March 8th?
Next Friday, March 8th.
UNE.
Who's hosting that? Who's hosting that?
It's Equality Maine.
Equality Maine.
So you can also find information on their website about it. Can you send that to the board? Yeah, I can forward it out to the board. Sure.
Thanks. Any other committees have met since the last time we got together and want to report out? Region 10 or?
I'll just do Region 10 real quick. We have been, we're forming committees now. So now Region 10 has its own committees. I'm on the negotiations committee and the facilities committee, and we're working on negotiations is working on the contract for the support personnel, and then we also, for the facilities committee, we're just working on trying to get more of a, they don't have like a master plan or anything like that, and so once we realized we were not going to get any funds for a new building, we're looking at what can we do to improve the building that they're in now until, you know, they can move forward and eventually get the new building over at Brunswick Landing. So in the meantime, we have to take care of what we have. You know, a couple years ago, we started doing the roof repair. So we're looking at establishing more of an ongoing line item there to do some improvements at the building. One of the big ticket items that's coming up is HVAC. Because of the shops that are in there, the air quality can be not so great at times. So that's one of the priorities that the board set. And so knowing that's on the list, we wanted to start getting more of a plan together. That's really it for Region 10 that I've got.
So did they hear that they definitely aren't getting the comprehensive school?
This was when we were trying to get the on the list for the
Okay, and that
the
they didn't
building,
get on.
and we did not get on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they're still
They're still
pursuing it in other ways.
Yeah, they're still pursuing the comprehensive high school thing, but that is, you know, we don't know when that will materialize. So in the meantime, we want to make sure we're keeping up with the building that we have.
Do they have, I mean, obviously it's only one building, right? Because it's just, do they have a equivalent of like a dentist or?
Sort of. It's a head maintenance position, and so that's kind of what we're finding, that that position really needs to be more of like a dentist, where you have someone who's knowledgeable and that kind of thing. So the person that we just hired, we actually had to just fill that position, is kind of stepping up into that
Elevated.
role. Yeah, but hopefully, you know, the newly formed building committee can also help support that person. So.
Maddie?
Stipend committee met yesterday, and Becky had the great idea that because we are going through this review process, and it takes some time, and it's complicated, that rather than meeting once a month, we're going to attempt to meet for a half day, and we'll see how that goes in May. We'll continue to meet monthly if we need to approve and review stipend requests, but in order to do the work of the review process, we're going to try it half days.
Are you guys reviewing all of the stipends? Is there certain ones you're looking at?
We are taking a look at all of them, just because we realize there hasn't really been any kind of comprehensive review of them for a really long time, so we just want to ensure that they're
Non-athletic stipends. We're not looking at athletic stipends. Although we are in charge of them, we're not looking at them.
because that's a whole different ballgame.
Okay, so that, all right, that's good. That's a good distinction. So basically just confirming that what we've said for a level is accurate, that they're not doing more than we thought they were, or vice versa.
Yeah, because the positions change over time. Sometimes they change because the person in the role changes. Sometimes the needs of the school change. And that's not always reflected in what we see in terms of the paperwork. So we want to ensure that we've got eyes on where it has changed. And in some cases, there may be stipends that we're no longer using.
Okay. Did you have your hand back up? Yeah. Laura?
So I had the question for the board, I guess, and Becky, if in the past you've had the opportunity to review the main, I don't know how to say the acronym, the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, is it MIAS? The results of that for our school in particular, it's not publicly available. I believe it's only available to administrators. And if we could look at that or whatever other indicators RSU 5 might be using to look at social emotional health for students, because it was so, I did want to say, I thought it was so wonderful, the workshop last time, and I was really impressed by all our administrators had to share with us about what we are doing in schools. So that to me kind of just seems like the other half of the piece of matching up what we're doing with the schools and then what information we have on student needs.
So I did check in with the principals on Tuesday. That was just yesterday. About that survey. And so it's done around this time of the year, and we will have the results in the fall. So I thought that would be a great workshop maybe to add in the fall, and we can look at that and other things that we do at that time. And it is a survey that's done every 2 years, and because of what was going on at the high school, there was a year that they skipped in 2017, but both the middle schools did it. So we'll have comparison data from there for those schools, and then we would have the data from 2015 from the high school. So we would be, if the board would like to see that, we would be happy to do that sometime in the fall once we get that data in.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Seems like a good follow-up to what we heard at the last meeting. All right, any other information shares, requests? All right. Finance Committee.
Okay.
Kate.
Right, we continue our efforts to look at the cost-sharing formula. We added a meeting last month. No, before the break. Seems like a month ago. And before that, the meeting, we did wrap up our interviews. I'm calling them interviews. It was more touching base with all the original members of the RPC committee that sat on the Finance Committee. So we did touch base with all of them to try to get some historical context to our cost-sharing formula. And now we're moving on towards really honing in on the different factors we can look at and putting into our formula. We've also finished looking at all of the plans we could find that have been updated since the formation of an RSU. There's probably like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 different plans that we went through and tried to evaluate the different things they were looking at updating in their plans. And that's pretty much where we're at right now with cost sharing. The other item that we did discuss at, I think it was our last meeting, was dental insurance and looking at changing plans here in the district to one that could offer more like user-friendly, being able to log online and look at your account and sign up, make changes on more of like a web-based instead of having to do written paperwork that was actually more work for HR as well to do any updates. So, and the costs are about the same or a little bit less. Was there a little bit of savings?
I think there was a little bit of savings, and there was higher level of service.
Yes.
Like there was
Yep.
more things were covered.
Yeah, it's definitely at least comparable, maybe a little bit better for like I think it was braces.
Orthodontics.
Orthodontics type work. There was some more coverage there. And so we just, agreed at the finance committee that we'd like to move forward with changing over to that. We are able to start, I think, this year for some people to move them over, but other people, we have to wait. So new hires, we can start putting?
Correct. MSMA is who we currently have, and we want to move over to Delta Dental. MSMA requires a 6-month notice. So what we're going to do is anybody during open enrollment that's a new hire or has not had dental insurance with us will go over to Delta Dental immediately, and everybody else who's currently got Delta Dental will have to wait 6 months, which I think
Or who
is
has
six-
MEA right
Sorry,
now.
MSMA,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, MSNA. So, yeah,
We'll have
it's
to
going to be a
switch over.
gradual transition. But.
Correct.
Okay. Policy. Well, Candy's not here, so.
There's really nothing other than what you see in print on the report, the gray sheet 10C. It's kind of self-explanatory. We basically we reviewed one. We had another one that we brought back to committee, another one that we brought to the principals for review, which we've done, and will come back this Friday. And then the one on the bottom we had not got to at that meeting, so.
Okay. Do you want to keep rolling on into the
Sure
pink?
can. So for second read, I would like to just discuss the first two this evening and take the other one off and bring that one back for more discussion at policy. So, and I have really no further comment on DJ unless you have, which is the bidding purchasing requirements, unless you have some specific questions that maybe Michelle could answer regarding that. So there's no changes to this one from the last time.
Cindy, just on that one, is there a threshold where, like, we have, where legal needs to, like, we have like a lawyer review a contract? Is there a sort of a threshold for that?
So I put any contracts through the lawyers.
Oh, okay.
Does that help?
It does.
Okay.
Oh, yep.
So it's $1. Any other questions on those? So I'm trying to remember, did we have any big adjustments on the last one last time?
No, for the first read? No, we
Yeah.
just added a lot of the legal references to that.
Yeah.
And then we changed on A, we had an error of quite a significant amount. Instead of 25,000, it was 250,000.
No, I'm sorry. The one you wanted to pull.
Oh, well, so I had some email questions around that, and then we've also had some discussions with other districts. Coincidentally, it happened right at the same time. I don't know. It was just in the air. Somebody started a thread with some districts around asking, do you have this in your policy? Do you have that in your policy? And so there's been a lot of back and forth and discussion. I just think it's worth bringing back before we go ahead and approve this.
Okay, just curious.
So then the next policy is the early graduation, and you can see the edits there. I'm wondering if you want me to change in the fourth paragraph. I think it just would look better if I wrote out the word first, and then with the second paragraph, wrote out the word one. In that underlined section with semester one and the end, at the end of first semester. I was looking at it earlier, and I'm like, I think it would look better. Okay,
Sure.
Just a small detail.
While you're doing that, you might want to write out the word 6 in the first paragraph. If that's a standard we want to uphold.
Any questions on this one?
Jeremy.
Just thank you, in that last.
I'm not used to looking at Jeremy for questions.
In that last paragraph, it doesn't mention that, like, the college needs to be accredited at some level. Like, do we have any standards for where we would accept college credit back to the high school? Is there any way we need to check to make sure it's a real college or something we'd accept. Yeah, it's not, make sure it's not Boston College.
So make sure it's not Boston College?
Yes,
Is that
yes,
what you said?
that's internal family strife, so yeah.
Oh, okay. So, I don't know the answer to your question, but I can check on that answer to your question.
All right. Any other questions? So I would take a motion for consideration and approval for the following policy second read, DJ and IKFA. Mara, second. Valley, any other discussion?
I don't think that would change the policy. Because what we,
I don't know, are they all?
so we typically are using like a community college, USM.
But with all of the online, are they all accredited? I don't know. I mean, there's high schools that aren't accredited. Thankfully, we are. I just got the letter.
Oh, that's good.
Right, I mean, just with all of the online colleges and, is there any distinction on what's acceptable? The leeway to, right, who decides?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it matters because further in the paragraph, it talks about the student and the guardian will confer with the principal and the guidance counselor they'll have to
Agree on the
agree
course of study,
on the courses that would fulfill the high school requirements. So
Right.
it seems to me that in the course of that discussion, if it was a questionable institution, it wouldn't happen. So I feel like we're covered.
Right, so that gives the administration the ability to be like, no, that doesn't count.
Right.
And they do that already. Any student going away for a semester needs to talk to guidance if they want to get credit for the work that they do in other schools. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in this case, they're gone, and their credits are just getting applied back, so it could be a little different. But I agree. I think that there is leeway at the bottom.
But I'll
there.
still get your answer for you.
Cool, thank you.
But the meeting occurs prior to the conclusion of their junior year.
Gotcha. Yep.
Before they leave, that has to be approved.
Gotcha. Yep.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? None. Thank you. Thank you. So. I know, right? Okay. What's that? The real part of the meeting, yes. It was all real. Don't worry, people. Everything everyone said so far is real. All right, so we are on to budget review.
Michelle, do you have the copies to hand out to the board? Yeah, I do. Thank you.
We're on to green.
Check the orange one.
Out with the orange. That's perfect. Right. I think that's good.
I'll take that good or bad. Oh, good. Excellent. Phew.
Good thing all the people didn't come.
We have more. Okay. The big news is that we did receive our subsidy number from the state, and it's good news. We're receiving $285,744 more dollars than we did from the subsidy listed in last year's adopted budget. And so I have updated the one-page overview to capture this, which results in reducing our tax impact from 4.98% to 4.09%. The biggest increase in expenditures, you'll notice that number changed a little bit, comes from adding in the mentors, which we forgot to add in the first round.
Can I ask you what page you're talking about?
Oh, okay, I don't know that
This
it's
is-
number, but it says budget overview
It's got a
for
little chart on it.
for RSU 5, and it has the little chart in the right bottom. Yes. So this is kind of the down and dirty that the town leadership last year requested from me. And so you can see that we've added in under drivers of that 3.39% at the very bottom there, the mentors at a cost of $30,200. And this is required by the state statute around mentors. Other adjustments that we've made from the page that I presented in January is that we took out the electrical work that's needed for the snack shack and the PA system because we're going to fund that through this year's budget. We adjusted the amounts for the administrative raises, and the property and casualty projection was increased from 8 to 12% based on the information that we received from MSMA. There is really one big unknown right now, and that is the Region 10 budget. And then the exact amount for that property and casualty, but because we raised it, I think that'll be a minor increase from what we have in the budget now.
Let's hope it's not more than 12%.
Right.
Can I
So
ask a quick question on the mentor piece? That's mentors for our staff.
The mentors for any new staff that we have to the district. They can be new, they can be a brand new teacher, their first year of teaching, or it could just be that they were teaching in another district for 20 years and now they're coming to RSU 5, and we still have to, under the new statute, provide a mentor for at least 1 year.
Okay, we had been talking about mentors for
I know.
students too. I
Yes,
just want to make
no,
sure that
it's a
people knew
great
this was
clarifying,
the staff.
question.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask
So-
one more question?
Oh, yeah.
On Region 10?
Yes.
So the big unknown. So
Yes.
remind me, we shifted Region 10 out, the state funds them directly now?
So last.
What's the question mark on our budget?
All right, so Michelle will probably need to, Michelle? Yes. You'll probably need to help with the clarification of this around Region 10. Last year, we switched all the expenditures basically out, and we had a decrease by $500,000. But we still have our local share that we contribute to.
So,
And I just spoke to Nancy Weed this afternoon just to say, when's your budget going to be done? We're getting ready to adopt ours. And so she said by Monday, she thinks that she'll have some answers for me. She said the bad news that she was kind of grieving when I called, because they just found out that while our subsidy went up, theirs went down by $115,000, which is quite a bit for Region 10. And so, she hasn't really met with her board, so I'm not going to throw out any numbers, but I think we budgeted something like 5%, and I think we're going to be, I think we're way under budgeted. But we'll let the board, their board work that out, and before we deliberate next time, I feel like we should have some firmer numbers, and you'll see probably another adjustment to this. But do you want to explain the expenditure piece and the local contribution in more detail?
right. So from what I understand on how Region 10 gets its money, it used to come through us, and then we would pay Region 10. Now Region 10 gets its own subsidy. As you can tell, it now went down $115,000. That's the first I'm hearing of it. So I'm agreeing with her that it's probably going to be more than 5% increase. What happens is, in that subsidy, the state has mandated that A, B, and C will be covered, but D, E, and F will not. So there's some certain debt services that are not going to be allowed, that they're not going to cover. There's certain programs, it's very specific. So whatever is not covered by the subsidy is then spread out amongst the sending schools based on their allocation. And I think they do it based on pupil count. So There is pretty much always going to be something that we have to pay. I don't think it's ever going to get to zero because, you know, ED 279 is always, you know, last year's data and the year before. And then there's these pieces that will never be covered. The state is just not going to pay the school for it. So we're going to have to come up with our share for that. So yes, it's not going to be $535,000 like we had in the past, but will there be something? There will always be something.
Okay.
What that something is, it will depend on what the budget ends up being.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the other.
Hold on.
Becky, I just,
I'm sorry.
I nodded at
I'm
her,
sorry,
but-
my memory is foggy on the mentors for new staff. Did we talk about that? Maybe I was gone for that board meeting.
I think that we have talked about that, and then you're talking about it more tonight. Cynthia is.
Okay, I'll hold it.
Okay. Okay, the other sheet that I want to direct your attention to is the sheet that's also green. That's titled Administrative Prioritization of Requests, February 26th.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the other area that I've done a slight adjustment on. We met as an administrative team yesterday, and as a team, we decided to move up the pre-K expansion that's under your third priority. On the previous sheet, it was lower on the list, and now we have moved that up to A. So that would be our first request under that. And we did that because of the number of requests that we are starting to receive with parents interested in our pre-K program this year. As many of you know, we've never offered universal pre-K in RSU 5. And what that really means when we say universal pre-K is that we're taking all students who want to attend pre-K. Right? But there are strict guidelines that we have to follow from the state statute that says you can't have more than 16 kids in a pre-K class, and you also need an ed tech in that classroom. So we've previously had kids on waiting lists because we've chosen not to add another teacher. So once you get 17 enrolled, you have to add, you know, if you're offering universal pre-K, you would have to add another teacher. And so we have had students, I think, every year since the formation of the RSU, who have not been able to access our pre-K programs. Currently, I checked on our numbers today. Currently at PES, we have room for 16 students, and we have 8 that have pre-registered. At Durham Community School, we have room for 32 students. 27 have pre-registered. At Moore Street, we currently have room for 48 students, and we currently have 67 that have pre-registered. Some of the students that are pre-registering in one school are really living in one of our other towns. And then we have had some people pre-register from out of district, saying we want to come to this, you know, pre-K at this school, and we always let them know, you know, we won't be able to probably let you know until like August, but they're also included in those numbers.
So is anybody on more than one list?
I don't know.
Like, do we have people, like, not out of district, I understand that. But like, if you lived in Freeport, and could you be like, okay, there's a lot of people, I'll go to Pownell and be one of the 8?
Well, we definitely at the, like last year.
Right,
you know,
people around the end, but I'm just wondering
we
if
do.
that.
But did we double count? I did not ask that question. Because, you know, I guess I would have to get the list and then double check them, and I haven't done that. But I don't think we have many of those.
Yep.
But it's a good question.
And following up
Yep.
to Michelle on the question of how these kids are counted, you said that all these numbers include kids from out of state, out of our district?
Right, so I know that when I called, it might have been somebody it might have been the secretary I talked to at Moore Street. I know that there's somebody from Gray that's registered there.
So would it be possible to get the list without those students? Without
Sure.
out-of-district
Absolutely.
students?
Yeah. I don't think it's a lot, but I'm
We know there's at least
happy.
one.
We know there's at least one, and then I'm happy to disaggregate all the data and get that to you. Okay. I guess I would really hope that within the next probably 3 to 4 years, we can develop a plan to offer universal pre-K. I mean, it's a goal that we have expanded. In the time that I've been here, we added that additional classroom at Moore Street, I think, 2 years ago. And, one of the big issues across the state with universal pre-K is really space. And we really need to explore that in our schools, too. So everyone on the administrative team supports the idea, understands how important it is for us to get our youngest learners here. And I think that was why, although all of those things on Tier 3, we feel like they're needed in some way, but we also feel like they can wait for another year. But if we were to add anything, I guess we really want the board to understand that that would be our first priority above the other ones.
And just so I'm clear, everything in first and second priority is already included in the budget you provided.
That's correct.
And then, so can I ask about the pre-K expansion on that third one? It says PES, but there's only 8 for 16 spots. Is that a space issue, that they have room for another classroom there, or?
No, the expansion at PES is really if they get up to 16. At the other schools, we offer, the way we offer pre-K is it's a 2-day program for most of the students. But if they are more at risk, then we offer a 3rd day where they come in on Friday, whether they are a Monday, Wednesday student or a Tuesday, Thursday. If they're identified that they would really benefit from more instruction, then they also come on Friday. Currently, because of the way Pownell and Moore Street share a person, that 3rd day currently goes to Moore Street, and that they don't have that programming at Pownell. However, if we expanded at Moore Street, then what our thinking was, and Pownell got up to 16. You have to remember, this is really early, so these will not be our final numbers. But if they got up to 16, then we would really want to offer that 3rd day at Pownell also.
Okay, so this PES, MSS, that's not 2 positions. That's basically bringing both of them up to a full-time teacher at both. Yes?
At Moore Street, it brings up, it creates another whole classroom, right? So we offer either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. So currently what we offer at Moore Street are what I call 3 sections. We have a full-time teacher who teaches all week, and that's 2 different, she has the Monday, Wednesday group, and then the Tuesday, Thursday. And then we have this other offering, and that teacher teaches there, I'm just going to say Monday, Wednesday, and then on Tuesday, Thursday, she goes to Pownell to offer that group,
right,
their instruction. So that person would probably be pulled back to teach full-time at Moore Street, offering, another section, and then we would hire a 0.5 at Pownell. And currently what we're offering at Pownell is a 0.4.
So that's what the 62.5 would do. The access would improve at Moore Street from 48 to 64, so we'd still be 3 short based on the current pre-registered numbers. And at PES, we would have 3 days the way we offer in all the other schools.
Correct, but if the numbers stayed the same, we talked about this, if there are only 8 students, we don't need a 3rd day.
Right.
Because we feel like the class size is so small that you can differentiate and provide the additional support. But the chances that these numbers, based on the past several years, are going to stay stagnant are just like, I don't know, 2%.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wasn't thinking about pre-K in February the year before.
Right.
So
Pretty
what
amazing
you're
67 people are in Freeport.
Yeah, and I just think, when I got here, we were offering a very kind of specialized program at Moore Street that was more for our, at-risk kids, and then for a few other people who kind of knew about the program, and we were also doing programming for 3-year-olds. And so the following year, we went to, no, we're going to provide for our 4-year-olds first before we reach out to our 3-year-olds. And so we changed that programming, and I just think that word is getting out, and that's what you're kind of seeing.
So basically, Becky, what you're saying is that the numbers are likely to go up from 67 by the time we get to September.
I feel like they're likely to go up in all areas. Now, remember, if they don't, there would be 8 slots at PES that we could offer to, which is what we've done the past couple of years, and a lot of people take advantage of that.
So the process and the priority is the local residents get the spots in the local schools first. And then if there are open spots, then people from the other towns who are members of the RSU can send their kids to the other schools.
So nothing is ever quite as simple as that. And so I'll attempt to the slots first go to the people who pre-register by the ending date. So on the ending date, which is coming up,
I think it's March 15th for Freeport. It might be different for Durham.
okay, so, sometime in March, they will look at that, and they will identify if we have students that are truly at risk. Sometimes they get priority. And also, there are certain cases where another sibling might already be going to another town within the RSU, so that we might give them priority to keep the siblings together. Right.
And my
So,
last
we're always looking at individual needs and everything, but as much as overall, I would agree that when everything is not complicated, then the people that live in that community or that town get the slots first. Then the next group that get that opportunity are the other 2 towns in the district. And then lastly, we look at people that are living in a different town outside of the RSU and requesting to come into our district.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. People who come from other districts pay tuition, right, to come?
Correct.
Okay. And is a room at Moore Street to expand to 4 groups? So basically you have 2 rooms going full-time?
So, yes, I'll answer the easy one first, and then I want to back up. We already have space at Moore Street because we have the teacher that's already teaching in the space Tuesday, Thursday, and that room is basically empty on Monday, Wednesday. I mean, they may use it for some small group instruction, but pretty much the room is empty. So that space already exists. But that's what I'm just talking about. If you said today, we want universal pre-K and make it happen, right? I mean, there may be space issues, right? So I would not jump to that, because if all of a sudden we were going to offer 2 more classes at Moore Street, that would be a big discussion, because we're already squeezing out Poor Laugh and Learn, and we're having to look at relocating them because there's not a ton of space right now at Moore Street. So we've been looking at space at Moore Street. I want to go back to your other question because I felt like my answer was a little bit misleading. When we say that they pay tuition, what happens is we do usually superintendent's agreement, so we get the subsidy from the state.
Okay.
Now, if they said, if like a superintendent from Gray New Gloucester, where we have that request, they say, no, we don't agree to that. And then the parents said, well, we'll pay, and if we had space, then that's what I call kind of tuition, and then we would set the rate. But normally, it's a superintendent's agreement, and then we just get to include those students in our account, which that's advantageous to us. Yeah. Oh, and I think that concludes my budget update.
Okay, thank you. So, so for presentations this evening, we're going to start with technology. Jim Grant.
Send the newest administrator out first. I see how this goes. Yeah.
Lamb to the slaughter, something like that.
That's right. Thank you for the opportunity for addressing you. I was thinking about this budget, and I thought back to when I was a child. My mother said, you could either have one big present that's really expensive for Christmas or all those action figures. I chose all those action figures because I wanted her to shop. I knew she loved that. But my budget really exists in a few big ticket items. If it's okay, I'd like to address where some of the smaller changes are first. If you look at the sheet that was handed out to you, there's some difference in professional service, staff travel, and where's my other line? Those are basically just massaging those numbers because there was travel in the professional services and professional development lines. And so Michelle and I went through and tried to move some of those around. There is just a little bit of an uptick, very slightly, in some of the professional development for my staff because they're all new. Fortunately, our data specialist, who is top-notch, instructs at some of these conferences, so she can attend them for free, and then she gets other travel and workshops for free, which frees up some for the rest of us. So that's very fortunate. If you then move your attention to the district-wide equipment account, which is the 57,340. That's where most of my changes exist. And when I was before you in the fall, we talked about we don't really know what's happening with MLTI in a year. So the laptop initiative is not just laptops, but it's also wireless and professional development, and we are really unsure of where that's going to go. We know that we have one more year coming up of that program. I was very fortunate to be one of 3 tech directors that Commissioner Macon has asked to go up and consult with her on what that's going to look like. So fortunately, RSU 5 is going to have a seat at that table, and we'll know, before most districts, but we don't always get what we want, and so we've got to be prepared. So the thought around this was, we did the voice amplification systems last year, and the school board was very generous in making sure that that happened. This year, I wanted to focus on the elementary wireless networking. So that existing system is a buyout from the old MLTI program that was in the high school, middle school, and part of Durham, which was moved to the elementary schools when MLTI brought in the new wireless network that we're currently working on now. And by new, the new one is going on to 5-6 years old now, making the other one closer to 10 years old. And we're starting to see some reliability issues there. So we still have what is known as E-rate, and it's a program that allows us to purchase networking equipment and then be reimbursed at almost 50%. So that's how we've proceeded. So we have a little over $100,000 in that line to purchase equipment for the elementary schools and then hopefully be reimbursed next year, which I would then like to look at the high school, middle school, and part of Durham replacing their wireless network if that state funding moves away. The rest of my budget looks at continued participation for the coming year in one-to-one laptops 6 to 12. We've had a slight uptick there due to enrollment. as well as our programs like Power School. A lot of the licensing is based on enrollment, and so we've seen an uptick there. We are putting in some more voice amplification systems and some projectors, but these are rooms that are not currently classrooms. We covered all of the classrooms this year, but we're trying to make sure that every space, if it becomes a classroom in the future, is covered. We have 3 Chromebook carts in my budget for the elementary schools so that we can continue to supplement that. They're used for not only everyday teaching in STEM classes, but also for testing when we do testing in those areas. And I have a little bit of money in there for replacement of elementary laptops, which were purchased over the last 3 years, but we're seeing some, breakage and some enrollment increases in staff as well, and so there's some money in there for that. So that's my budget in a nutshell. Question?
Thank you, Jim. So in the prior lavender sheet, which was the administrative prioritization of requests, under other requests, there was a request from you for $12,000 for projectors and sound systems for the middle school and Mass Landing School. Would those be funded with other funds so you can continue to do that work, or this is the work that you have decided to put off until next year?
This is the work we've decided to put off till next year. I talked with the principals of those buildings, and so there are going to be some going into the middle school, but we'd like to spread it out over time, as these are, a fairly low priority as it exists now. And for example, Mass Landing would rather have a Chromebook cart this year than next year. So we moved that into this year. We'll do the sound amplification systems next year. You're welcome.
Could you offer clarification to them about the sound system? Because I think all of the classrooms with this will have the sound amplification, but it's the smaller areas that won't. So can you just give a couple of examples of if you can remember, where we're postponing for another year, but all of the, like if you're a 4th grade or a 7th grade social studies teacher, you're going to have that system.
Right. So some of the ones that were not part of the current budget is JMG at the middle school, the cafeteria system at the middle school, RTI at the middle school. So they're working with 2-3 students. Probably don't need the amplification system. Some special services rooms. Mass Landing computer lab, which is a small room. Art room, music room, activity room. There was also a question put forward about filters for tonight. And I assume that you're talking about content filtering?
Correct.
So there's a device, which is our firewall. That device is about $25,000 to $30,000. We then have to pay annual licensing for as many people as connect to that, and that hovers around $8,000.
I think the question is, once they leave the premise, right, and the kids take their laptops home, there's no content filtering at all?
No, that's not correct.
My concern was at school.
Oh, it is at school.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect us to have to extend to in the home, but others might feel differently about that. I was more concerned with what kids are able to access when they're at school. They use the laptops a lot to do research, whether it's looking at YouTube videos or other platforms. And I mean, like, for instance, at my office, I can't get on Facebook. It blocks me. So I didn't know if we had that capability. And if we don't have that capability, how much it would cost the district to implement.
Okay, we do have that capability. To your question, when they are off-site, there is some filtering. All traffic comes back through this before going out to the internet, but it's not as restrictive as when they're in this building. So Facebook is a good example. We cannot get to Facebook here or anywhere in the district. Outside of the district, they can get to Facebook, right? And there's other exceptions like that. YouTube.
YouTube actually is a good one because, what is there any ability for us to restrict kids from looking up videos that the one that comes to mind is like being able to listen to music with explicit language.
Mm-hmm.
And I know because I had my son test it, that he was able to listen to a song with explicit language. And I told him, don't worry, if you get caught, I'll talk to the principal.
My mother made me do
I
it.
told him to do it. Yeah, it was research. But the other issue was I had recently read an article about within YouTube, when kids are viewing, even on YouTube Kids, that there was some concerning stuff popping up that was showing kids how to self-harm. And so I didn't know if there was a way for us as a school district to lock that down.
So, yes, and in fact, it is restricted. The problem with any type of content filtering is what level do you go to, right? I can shut all of YouTube off. Have a lot of angry people at me if I did that. Or I could leave it wide open, right? Where we are right now is we are filtering the best we can offensive material. Now, the issue with YouTube specifically is that it's a hybrid system between an artificial intelligence that tries to see what this content is and determine whether it should be blocked, which is not perfect, or the person self-reports. I know it's explicit, I'm going to put that on there so that kids can't see it. The vast majority of YouTube users don't care, and they publish whatever they want, and the AI doesn't pick it up. And so our filter doesn't know that it's explicit or, should not be shown to students. So, we do the best we can, and we filter as much as we can. And I get complaints almost daily, both sides. You're restricting too much, we need to open this, and then somebody will call and say, hey, this got through with this bad word. And so it's a difficult balancing, but we do filtering here.
I just wanted to add to what Kate said. I'm really concerned specifically about YouTube and YouTube Kids because there's this growing trend as well of splicing content into videos that are for kids. And so I agree with what you said about how it's a balance and we don't want to block too much, but it really concerns me, and I'm wondering if there's a certain age where we don't feel, I will just say personally, my oldest kid is 6 and I just don't let my kids go on YouTube at all or YouTube Kids at all. So that's my choice as a parent, but I'm just wondering, do we want to say there's age restrictions or how do we balance that? I don't have an answer, but.
And I would imagine the usage of YouTube is more in the middle school grades and up when they have laptops, right? Because I think, in the Chrome carts and stuff like that, in the younger grades, they're probably not using them so much for the research component. I don't know, maybe that's not true, but so I think by virtue of how they're using them, there's a bit of that going on already, that the younger ones aren't accessing those. Now I'm going to send my kid into school and try and figure it out.
Yeah, but the question, and I think following up with to what Maura said, is are kids, say at Mass Landing, blocked from YouTube? Is the filter the same for all the schools, or do you adjust the filter differently for the different age groups?
Right now, it is set up to be pretty much the same across the district, but there is more monitoring and less access at the elementary level to this type of material. Specifically, the requirements for filtering that we have in place address the one-to-one initiative, which is 13 years and up. It's 6th grade and up.
You just brought up the word monitoring, which I was wondering about. When I used to be in the HR world, we monitored what our employees were accessing. do we do that as well?
No. We have the capability to do that, but we do not do that.
Because we're concerned about privacy violation?
Yes, and
Doesn't every kid sign something saying you have no right to privacy on our laptops?
that's correct. And so monitoring, when I use the term monitoring, is more of an artificial intelligence monitoring. Our systems monitor, they search for usage, aberrant usage, and then notify me, hey, there's something going on over here, can you go take a look?
Okay.
And then I will take a look and see if it really is something going on.
So we do that.
We do that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and
So that's good.
we absolutely have the right to look at anything, any place, anywhere, anytime. And you're right, Michelle, that is, said multiple times that this is RSU 5 property. And people feel an ownership because it's a laptop, but we remind them it's RSU 5 property, including all documents and emails and everything that is used on our systems.
So as far as the filters, you said that the filter that we currently use, sometimes the AI doesn't really recognize images or words or material that is explicit. Is there any other technology, another filter that may filter better, that may recognize more of those culprit?
So, Chevy and Ford, right? What I've heard is that we have one of the best filters out there, that our firewall is top notch compared to SonicWall or anything. We have what's called a FortiGuard filter, and it's one of the best. People in my world are envious of RSU 5 for its technology. Jeremy, do you?
I can definitely second that. It's a very strong product. It just is. So.
Okay, well, that's good.
And I had just last follow-up question. When you said that the kids in the lower grades are monitored, you meant monitored by the teachers and the staff?
Correct.
Or because the filter monitors more and it's more strict in terms of what it allows to go through?
So the filter that's applied at, say, Mass Landing is no different than what's applied at the middle school. But a student on a Chromebook taking a test does not have the same access to a middle school student sitting in the cafeteria or library working on a project.
And do you get complaints from lower grade parents about their kids having access to explicit material?
No, I have not
No.
yet. I'm
Okay.
sure I will.
Okay.
Do you want to give your email?
That's right.
No, 'cause-
But, in all seriousness, today I've heard from 2 principals saying the filter is too tight. People are complaining that they can't get on certain YouTube content at home. Right? So I've made no change. The FortiGuard has. FortiGuard people have said we need to tighten this up. So now, I'll have to review that and see, do we lower it? Do we, is it okay? Is it filtering the correct amount?
Well, I don't envy that job. Maddie?
Not a question, more of a comment. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's a constantly evolving landscape, more than probably anything else that we do here. It's constantly changing, and nefarious users who want to get at kids and harm kids they're gonna stay ahead of the curve. And so I'm glad to know that we have top-notch programs, and I'm satisfied that you're doing the best that you can with what we have.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
Do the teachers have like a LAN desk type ability to look at the desktop of a student while they're in the class? Do they have that kind of drop-in?
Not all of them
ability?
have it implemented, but some do.
Yeah, so if a teacher suspected something, they could, 1, go to the student's desk, or 2, drop in and see what's on their screen too. So.
Because, not necessarily inappropriate content, but, my kid will tell me, so-and-so plays games while we're supposed to be working, and he's really good at switching back to the screen when the teacher walks by. So that functionality might help, because they can see from their desk what they're looking at. Interesting.
My tech integrator here at the high school is a very wise person. And she says, don't try to use technology for human behavior. And so very often I'll see teachers just take a step back so they can see everybody's screen.
Yeah.
And say, you're not on task.
Yeah, right. Kate?
Maybe a conversation for another day, but I would like us to maybe discuss sometime the value of YouTube for research purposes.
Okay. Any other questions for Jim regarding the budget? we sort of went a little off task there. Well, we had him. Mara.
I think this is budget related.
She's like, I'll tie it in somehow.
And then what's the cost? I had the question about the Common Sense media training, if who does that and if that's in your budget.
So, did I mention I'm new? I'm newer. Yes, there is some of that going on. I've started meeting with some of the STEM teachers to see where that is, getting some information from the principals, but I've just started scratching at that. I know the integrators are using it, but I don't have a clear enough picture to be able to outline for you an exact rubric of where things are in that, but we do use Common Sense.
Okay, thank you. I was just, I was wondering how much, I know last time we talked about the vaping session for parents, and I was wondering how much sort of opportunities like that for parents as well were going on, where they're, we're talking to them about those components of Common Sense media.
Yeah, one of the goals that the superintendent and I have discussed is being more involved in that type of curriculum approach and making sure that it's equitable across all schools and makes sense going up, pre-K all the way through 12. So we'll have that information for you in a more cohesive form.
And we have, not this year, but I think it was last year, a couple of different sessions. We brought in the state police that did a presentation. Their cybercrime task force came in and presented to parents about hey, these are the websites that you might want to look at, and these are the things that we're seeing, and basically to scare parents. Rightfully so, frankly. But, we have done those type of things in the past as well. So in addition to what we're teaching the kids, but provide the opportunity to parents to come in, because really, your example of the vaping is a good one. And I'll give Principal Pidden a shout out on that. The next day, an email went out to every middle school parent in Durham about vaping. So when I said we needed more information, we got it. But, you don't know what you don't know. And so just providing that opportunity for parents to learn more about, the landscape on the internet with the kids was helpful. And I think they were pretty well attended. I think they did one at Freeport Middle, and I think they did one in Durham, and I think both of them were well attended. They did one at the high school as well? Yep, good. So.
Yeah, Michelle, I just wanted to say, to your we don't know what you don't know point, I think the thing about YouTube is a lot of parents maybe aren't aware of the issues with it, so.
What you can find, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
We hope to be doing better in that realm, too.
Good. All right. Anything else for Jim? Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. So next up is curriculum instruction.
Good evening again. How come you put this down so low? I thought we were the same height. So I have two to share this evening. I would like to just start with the improvement of instruction first, and then answer the questions related to that, and then move on to the GATE. What you'll see here is for staffing adjustments, I have added the mentors, as was previously mentioned, 25 positions at $12.35 each, and there's a figure, and then a stipend position for the mentor chair. So those, the chair stipend will come to the board in March for approval, and then in terms of the mentor information on our April 10th board meeting, where you're going to be presented with a peer mentor support handbook for your review and approval. So you'll have a lot of really in-depth information about that role. I'll give you a little bit of a summary about what that will be tonight, but for budget purposes, I'm just going to give you the summary, but you'll have a much more in-depth look at that on April 10th. So those are the two asks, and The reason that those are being asked for is because it's a rule chapter change from the Department of Ed that as part of our PEPG, which is our evaluation system for educators, that now they've moved the peer support into that rule. So this is something that we have to do. And so we've been working on that all year. I've had some subcommittees working on the handbook. I've reached out to Emily Gribben from the Department of Ed, and she's come down, and so we're putting things together. Sometimes it's the cart before the horse because we don't have all the pieces in place, but we're doing a really great job putting that together. So the purpose is to support our new educators who are new to the district. This is to answer the question somebody asked, what's the role, is to support those teachers. We know that we talked about this as a board goal, we want to retain our educators. That's one of our goals, and so this is to support that as well. It's important to have that support because when you go to college and you're becoming a new teacher, you really learn about 25% of what you need to know. And there's other things you kind of, you jump in the pool and you're trying to swim, and it's nice to have those life preservers and those other supports there for you. So they would be meeting them right away at induction day. When we first hire them, we do an induction, 2 days of induction. They will be part of that process. They will be going over building. They'll be paired up in a way that makes sense, preferably building-based and content-based. The principals will have a role in that, and we'll explain more in April. And so they'll be meeting on a regular basis. It may be 3 times a month for 2 hours. It may be half hour. It depends on the 2 partners together deciding on how often they'll meet. They'll talk about their growth plan. They'll look through the rubrics. They'll look through the strategic plan. They'll be really getting the nuts and bolts of how does the school work, how does the district work, so to acclimate them and acculturate them to our district. So that's the purpose of having them there. We'll also be giving support to all of our new mentors and meeting with them at least 4 times a year. What's going well, what's not going well, what more supports do you need to help your mentee? So that's in a nutshell, but you'll get the more in-depth information in April. And the other question that I got was was something above, if you look at where strategic objective 1 is. I had written here the new second bullet. The new Big Ideas math curriculum materials were a 6-year purchase made last year with the exception of the bubble group at the middle school. So I think by writing that I might have confused the issue. We are paying for the other, the bubble group that goes, when we first bought it, we bought the amount we needed. Now that bubble group went from MLS into Big Ideas, and then now they're going to each grade level, we need to purchase about 20 to 30 more a year of those materials for that new grade level. So we are paying, yeah. I was like, I wonder what that question, and then I reread this, and I'm like, that's why the question is there.
That class is too big for Big Ideas.
Yes. So yes, and we're not raising the budget because it's part of curriculum materials, and we have enough in there that we don't need any more to support that.
Is the 25 mentor positions, is that just based on historical turnover? That's what we've typically hired every year?
It is. I think it's almost been about 25 exactly each of the last 3 years within one. And so the first year, the way we're phasing it in, or we want to phase it in, is this coming fall. If we have I'm hoping we have right around that number or a little less. And then the next year, the way it's written in the plan is if they're brand new teachers, they'd have a second year. If they're veteran teachers, unless there's a real need, they wouldn't have a second year with
That's
a
going to be
mentor.
one of my questions. Was there a distinction between like brandy new out of school
Yes.
and just new to our district? Okay.
Right. So they're not going to need as much of some support as other support if they're a veteran teacher.
So by law, do brand new teachers require 2 years of mentoring? Or is there discretion if the teacher who's brand new at the end of the first year says, I'm all set, I don't need it? Do we need to still provide that
If
mentoring?
they're so it's, I think the law is at least 1 year, But I will have that information, and it's in the mentor handbook. I will have that information. We can decide locally. They give us locally. We can make decisions. We could have them for 3 years if we wanted to. But there's a minimum that every new hire has it for at least 1 year, and they have to have had effective, summative scores. They have to have an effective rating, and there's a few more things than that you'll see.
Okay. And it's 1-to-1, so
Yes.
one mentor to one mentee. So you
Yes.
can have one stipend servicing 2 new teachers.
Correct. Correct. And if there ever came a time when there's a shortage and somebody had to do 2 mentors, the recommendation is 2 mentees. The recommendation is not to have them together, because you're not doing a service, because they're individual needs for individual mentees.
Right, I'm like thinking of, if this was in place in Pownell this year, that might be tough, right? But the number of turnover, like maybe more than half of the people are new this year, so we wouldn't have enough people to be.
So what we do is the priority is the school building, and then the content, right? But we have, like, for example, I've sent out a few communications already to staff. And I've, at the last time I looked, I already have 20 people interested. They're going to be going through a training in June. And so, for example, I have one at Moore Street that would do anyone in K2. So they could travel. We just have to work out the details, which we would do with the principal. They usually would meet after school. They'd have to travel during the day because we have decided to have 3 minimum observations required. So they have to actually observe their mentee 3 times and give them feedback. And it's meant to be a formative process. It's not evaluative. The principals don't, have, the communication is confidential between the 2, because it's that partnership. The only reason they would say anything beyond it would be if there's a violation of anything that is not right, the state law, or something has happened that needs to be reported, right? Other than that, it's confidential. It's about mentoring and formative, and they're growing together. It's a partnership.
So has there any thought been given to maybe recording teachers for the observations rather than have teachers travel during the school day and leaving their own students with a sub? Because we're doing that more and more often, and I think it's great value to have those observations happening. But the price that we pay is pretty high, because the students are with subs more and more frequently now as we increase the number of observations.
I think we can keep that to the next conversation in April if we could, but I have some thoughts about that, on how to do that.
Betty?
Ask about the .5 math strategist.
Yes, from last year. So it really wasn't in my budget, but I talked about it last year, so we're asked to put in what we asked for last year. It was really in
That's what we added last year.
Yes, and
Thank
so
you.
I just carried it, I followed the directions and carried it over what I had written last year.
I was reading it wrong. I thought we were doubling the coverage.
No,
Thank
it was
you.
just last year, and that's working out very well, and thank you very much. I think Jen already thanked you for that, too.
Kate?
You guys are going to regret putting the dollar amounts on here.
No, we won't, because I already know what you're going to say. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And let me remind you, that was a directive.
Oh, yeah. I know. I asked you to put it on there, and now you're going to regret it. Because you probably already know.
Yes,
this,
I do.
That the numbers don't match.
Yes, I do. And I said, that's what we were talking about that over there. I said, how come your number doesn't match? It's $600 difference. And we figured out why, so. But we figured out what we need to do.
So which one's
right?
Mine.
Okay.
Well,
Yours is right?
yes.
Because don't forget, it's on this one, too.
Yes, and yes, we know.
Okay. All right.
Yes. It's a few $100s difference, 600, I think. Because I looked at her sheet and I'm like, that doesn't match mine. So, but we know why, we know how it happened, and we apologize. I guess I'll own it. It's my fault.
Okay, any other?
Thank you, Kate.
Oh, yeah. Jen?
So, I know you're going to talk more about the mentoring program in
Yes.
April, but as far as it being a budget, does the state offer any money to schools for making us?
Come on now,
No,
Jen.
but they suggest that you might want to pay them stipends. No.
So there's no, so, okay,
It's an unfunded directive.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you see the article, the community news letter that went out? Because there was a,
Couple different versions.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. So the mentoring article was in there. Right. So if you want a little more information, it was through the families.
Kate?
I never can keep this straight. Can you please just give a summary of where we stand with district-wide math strategists and literacy strategists?
So how many do we have?
Yes, and
Okay.
where they are.
Okay. So for math strategists, we have one math strategist, K-5, so shared between all 4 schools, and we have one math strategist, 6-12, between the 3 schools. And then for literacy, we have 2 literacy strategists, K-5, so Moore Street and Mass Landing share one, and Durham and Pownell share the other. And then they do some things together across, so it's not exactly always that way. And then at the middle school this year, we have one, is it 0.4, 0.3? I'm sorry, I don't have the exact. It's less than half.
I think it's 0.4.
Okay, well, we think it's 0.4. Literacy strategists shared between Durham and Freeport Middle School.
So like one day in each school. That'd be 0.4, right?
Well, so she teaches her other part of her day at Freeport Middle School, and so it's not an exact easy split,
Gotcha.
but they've worked out a schedule so that it works for all of them. Right. Correct.
We have different types of strategists at the high school, like Lisa Hogan.
Right. Yes.
Which is, no, it's more like, I think she's referred to as a tech integrator.
Right.
But
she's
she
really
kind of works as a strategist. We also have 3 strategists that are in the special ed budget that also do
One at the high school.
different types of coaching that
Yeah,
I
for
would
special ed.
put kind of in the same category.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, one more.
So when you say we have one FTE math district-wide, did you say that was 6 through 12 or 6 through 8?
6 through 12.
That is 6 through 12. And the half of that time is at the high school?
I hesitate to say half. I think there was the administrators, they all work out what the needs are, and then they decide on the schedule. And so it might be a little more time at the high school at the beginning of the year where they were just implementing, and then
Okay.
and then there's some release time for some math. So it's a variety, but it's about. You could say it's a third, but I don't think that would be exactly if you documented all the minutes. It's where the needs are, and
Maddie?
And that's because we were implementing Big Ideas Math, correct? Is that why we brought in the math strategist?
I would say that there was a need to focus on our math instruction more than the implementation. He's done a lot of work with the implementation, but it's really more, the purpose is really more for, because we've looked at our scores and
Right.
we know that that's an area of need.
And he was in the middle school before Big Ideas
Yes,
came out.
he's a teacher at the middle school for 3
So
years.
I guess I'm just wondering what the, I mean, I'm always curious about math and literacy as well. And do we anticipate that we continue to need this focus on math and not on literacy? Because there are no new curriculum developments in literacy? Or I'm just wondering.
I think our goal was really all last year and this year was to focus on our math, because to just do it for 1 year and then just to leave it, it takes a while. It takes more than a year or 2 years to really, see the differences and, what our math practice is. Like, for example, we're really focused on mathematical discourse, and we're looking at that, observing that through a lot of lenses. And so that's our real focus. And it's hard to focus on so many things at one time. It's not, that was the area that we chose of need. It wasn't because of the implementation.
Okay. So we anticipate that ever-evolving need is going to require that position to remain for
Right.
the long term. But
Yes.
how do we feel about literacy?
That's not something that we've looked at the high school level at this point.
So we do have literacy goals, K through 12. But I think, is your question directly about, do you see us creating a literacy specialist at the high school? I'm trying to get, I feel like we're not quite, I guess I'm not quite understanding your question, because we do have the literacy specialist at the middle school that we just talked about. And then, like Lisa Hogan is focused on instruction in all content areas. So I don't want you to feel like we're ignoring literacy at all.
Well, I feel a little familiar with Lisa's work just from being on the PBE committee and hearing her talk about how she works with coaching teachers, and I think her work is a great value, and I wish we had 5 of her. I wonder about our literacy curriculum and I wonder if we're as focused on literacy in the high school as we are on math. And I'm always concerned about imbalances in our curriculum development.
Okay, so that clarifies for me. And I would say, because we're very content driven at the high school, more than K to 8, right? In K to 8, most teachers are teaching multiple subjects. And so I would say that we don't have that imbalance, because we have department chairs, we have like Lisa, and we have K to 12 literacy goals. But the implementation or the request to expand the math strategist to the high school was because of us really looking at the scores and being concerned about that. So that's kind of what drove that, and the need for a math strategist.
Thank you. And I think I've brought this up in different contexts in the past. I guess I'll bring it up from time to time because I want to make sure we're not so focused in one area. I'm concerned as a culture that we're so focused on STEM and on math that we fall short on the other side, and I just want to make sure that we're always looking for balance.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would like to follow up and say that I hope that we would not let our scores drop before we act to support our students, and I'm sure you have that first and foremost in your mind. But I also want to point out that we have twice the time, the literacy strategist time in the K through 5 than we do have for math. So we are putting a lot of effort into the early grades for literacy, twice the amount of support.
Right? Well, I can see where you're. So we've just started having discussions at the administrative team just this week about, there are multiple ways to support. So I know as a board it's really hard because it looks like if we put it on the whiteboard, it looks like a score of 2 here and 1 here. But there are many other ways to support programming. And so, you know, you have to really look at the whole package and look at like the consultants we brought in. So we just recently brought in a math consultant from Everyday Math, and what else are we doing to kind of support that? So that's the danger of trying to say 2 to 1, because we would really have to look at what are we doing to support math holistically? What are we doing to support literacy holistically? And I think that we do keep that balance in mind, and we're looking at the data, you know, every year to say, you know, where is the need and what do we need to do? So I don't think the imbalance is as great as it may look when you're just looking at how many coaches do we have. So just one follow-up. So for example, Lisa Dimick, who's at Pownell, has a lot of math knowledge, and she does some work with our math coaches. But so that's something I would put, if I was showing you a holistic look, I would like put her in there as math support.
I was just going to add from a historic perspective that when I first joined the board, that I would have said, we did not have enough math support at the time, and we've slowly built it up. And so when I see this number, I'm actually thinking that we are kind of at where we were trying to get to. And so I feel like we're finally strategically placed where you have what you need. And if they didn't, we'd be seeing another request probably for additional strategists. But I think this is where we were trying to get to.
I remember a handful of years ago the statistics about, you know, our literacy district-wide, our literacy scores, and I think they still remain this way currently, correct me if I'm wrong, but our literacy scores were dramatically higher than our math scores across the board, so that led us to invest in the strategists and invest in the new curriculum. I'll be really interested to see, you know, how long does it take for us to see those scores across the board lift up? And I don't know the answer to that, but I would hope that within 3 years, we would start to see the scores actually rising. And then if we don't have a heart-to-heart in budget season, you know, like, because the objective of making these targeted investments was to move the needle. How long do we give ourselves to let the needle go? Because, I mean, clearly it takes time. I mean, no one expects this to happen in a day, a month, a year, but how many years do we need to give it?
Well, this year we saw a dramatic increase in math at the high school after just 1 year. So I don't know if we can attribute it directly to the coach, but certainly it's probably making some kind of a difference.
That's great. That's great. I remember last year when we were looking at the scorecard, having things not be super clear. So
well, because they go up in 1 year and then down in the next. And
and then like the scores weren't all in from the state, and so I remember being like craving more clarity than I could actually achieve. But if you remember some portion of the data showing the increase, I'm happy to hear that.
And our ELA scores were still significantly higher in math at the high school, but there was a marked increase in I think by 20 points or something like that. 20, yeah. Okay, so moving to GATE? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you don't see any asks on there, so I'm going to go right to the questions that I received, and then we'll have more questions if other people have more questions. So one of the questions... First question was, how many students does this include? And could you briefly describe what support they receive? I was assuming it was your question.
Yeah, because I knew that.
That's what I figured. No, I figured it was because of that. So, So we have currently, we have two areas that we look at. We look at the academic English language arts and math area, and then we also have identified students in art and music. So I'm going to give you two separate numbers. So we have 93 students currently district-wide that are identified under either intellectual ability in a particular area, which is either the math or the ELA. And then we have, let's see, and to service those students, we have 3 full-time GATE teachers who primarily service grades 4 through 8, because we only identified the end of 3rd grade, so the services actually start with the GATE teachers in 4 through 8. And we also have an additional math teacher at the middle school level, 7th and 8th, who provides the support needed in math across the district. So that sort of is another GATE service, if you will. In the K-3 level, we have a consultation model with the educators. So if an educator reaches out to any of the GATE teachers and says, I really have this student that is, stands out in whatever area, then they consult with the GATE teacher and then they come up with a plan for that student. So their needs are being met, but not in a pull-out or direct service model. It's with consultation, and the teacher differentiates within that consult. And at the high school, we also use that consult model. I should look at everybody. We also use a consult model for the identified students. We have a variety of vigorous offerings, and I don't know if you remember back in October of 2017, we had a presentation for some of those of you that were here at that time. And I could even give you a copy of this if you'd like. I did make copies. And it really just outlines what we've just said with the different, where the academics are serviced. And then in the art, at the high school level, with the consultation model, we also have the academic pathways that are varied. And the guidance also helps support the students when they're making their schedules. So now the guidance is working with the GATE teachers more closely when they're consulting to make sure that if they've run out of classes here, what are we going to do for those students who need another math class? And they look at online offerings and other offerings. So that's sort of the overview of that academic part. And for the music and art, we have 72 identified students, and so it's basically art and music. And we have stipended positions that help service those, and also the teachers in the art and music educators are also servicing them. So in that presentation that we had a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, so some of it is consultation and differentiation in the regular classroom for the identified art students. And the teachers of the gifted consult with art teachers to assist in creating art and music classrooms that enrich and are challenging for those students. And then there's also opportunities for enrichment activities provided through the stipend positions. So that's the overview of what we currently have and how we are servicing. The next question is, and this is Valley's question, what is the plan to increase ELA GATE for 7th graders at FMS or any other GT group that receives less than average GT programming? So there's no state guidelines on how much service that the students or what the programming should look like. We are currently, we being the GATE teachers and I, are currently in discussions around looking at scheduling and exploring tightening up those schedules and reorganizing. We're looking at we're brainstorming a variety of ways because everyone in that meeting felt that we could do that. There's some scheduling things that could be tightened up. There's places where they're not servicing, and they could be. We could even look at a model that has one person doing 3, 4, 5, and one doing 6, 7, and 8. You know, so there's lots of different ways to look at it, but they all felt that we have the resources that we need to meet the needs of students. And if you think about the program, for example, in ELA at the lower grades, 4th and 5th, a lot of it is, Chelsea and I have had, Chelsea's the coordinator as well. She's one of the teachers, but she's also the gate coordinator. We've had lots of conversations around, you know, she says, you know, in ELA, I find oftentimes that because their reading levels are higher, they can still participate with their peers in the classroom. They're working already at a higher rigorous level, and if I pull them out, they're missing that. So she helps support. It's a lot more like that in the ELA, unlike math. At the middle level, they're doing, in 6th and 7th, there's some unit work that they're working on. And so right now our model is 4 weeks, 3 times a year at both of the schools. And so they're in the FMS right now, they're in that second set, and they're going to get that third 4-week set in the spring, later in the spring. There's been a little bit of difficulty with scheduling, but we're working that out. We know that. We're aware of that. And then also, if an individual parent ever feels that their particular child's needs aren't being met, they should go right to the classroom teacher and have a meeting with the teacher and the gate teacher together to see how we could best meet their needs if they're not. Most of them can be met in a certain amount of program, but it's really an individualized, it's kind of grouped, but also individualized, because some of those students still need more and have independent projects that they're working on. That have been fabulous. Vali's experienced that. And so basically it's individualized based on their needs, but it's not exact, it's not cookie cutter. It's not the same, and there are differences in one school and the other. Sometimes it's based on the number of students that can be grouped together that have that identification, or if they can pull in a couple of other kids. So there are some variables in the big picture. The next question is from Kate, and Kate asked about band at DCS. She asks, are offerings at DCS comparable to those at FMS? If there are constraints due to pupil count, what are the opportunities to collaborate? So again, we look at the individualized needs of students, and like I just said, their experiences may be different. For example, at FMS, it's a larger group. There's a large group going through right now that has 16, which is really unusual. So they can do an ensemble. We have one identified at the 8th grade level in Durham. So that particular student is doing some music theory work with the teacher at the high school level. Not at the high school, but at that high school level. So it's, and then last year we had a 4th grade band student, or 4th grader identified in band, and we don't offer band in 4th grade. So that student was actually put into the 5th grade band as a way to meet that student's needs. This year that student that student's needs are being met, because I can't really identify anything more than that, but I've consulted with the teacher. So we are always trying to think there's not one prescription that this is how it should look for everyone. It's because every student is different. So I hope that explains it a little bit. Do you have more to that question, Kate? You're looking at me like you're...
I guess, when I read that question, my thought was, if there was, say there were 2 band eligible kids in Durham, but clearly not enough for an ensemble, would they be given the opportunity to join the Freeport Middle School band? Because they do have better offering there at this point based on numbers, right? And, or vice versa. If it happened that all the kids happened to be at Durham and there was a couple at Freeport, could they join together so that, because I mean, I do think that's a cool offering that those kids have the opportunity to do that would be unfortunate if other kids couldn't participate in it.
Right, and we've talked about that. We've also talked about if we brought in some, a person that, and I apologize up front because I don't know, I'm not a musician, but for percussion, right? And so you might have just some of the people that are identified that, you know, are, that's their, they're not, some of them are singers and some of them are playing, so having, if you had somebody come in and invite them to come over after, you know, we've talked about a lot of things. In fact, in the fall, in October, I think it was the October PD day, I met with the music department for the whole morning, and we talked about a lot of things like that. You know, how can we meet, you know, how can we meet their needs? And, you know, we brainstormed, because it was the whole music department. So how can we meet their needs and what can we do? Cross-district, you know, there's a lot of, sometimes there's barriers with transportation and all that, and, you know, they get out of school earlier than, you know, Freeport Middle School gets out of school earlier, you know, so there's lots of those other, but we did talk about trying to, you know, be inclusive of those that are in different schools and giving them the same opportunity, if possible.
I guess I'm just thinking, like, even if there's a schedule issue, there are lots of opportunities. One was the pep band that played at the last two varsity games, basketball games. They performed at LL Bean around the holiday. It just seems like it wouldn't be that hard for the student at Durham to practice the music with the teacher at Durham, and not have to every Tuesday make it over to practice with the GT kids after school, but practice the music independently and maybe make a few of the practices closer to the final actual event and be part of that performance.
When you said the pep,
so the GT band at Freeport Middle School throughout the year has several different performances that they prepare for. And that's kind of, it's just, to do that, they are meeting Tuesdays after school.
Okay.
And for the pep band, I think it was actually a little bit more intense. They had to do it twice and maybe a little bit during the school day, during BCS. But it seems like we could allow a student that is a gifted and talented band student to get the music, practice with the teacher at Durham, but still participate with the ensemble.
And I'd like to see that happen too. I mean, I know when the middle school students go to audition for districts, they bus together with the Durham kids, and it would be great. I think it would be great for our whole arts programming in the district for these kids to have some exposure to one another prior to when they're sitting in band freshman year, if they even stay, you know, it'd give them an incentive to stay in band and forge relationships ahead of time. And I don't think it would be, they don't practice that much for that LL Bean concert and the pep band stuff. It seems like it could be doable.
Yeah, it does.
And I just want to say, knowing the staff that work with you, I just wanted to just say you guys do a great job.
Thank
you. So we're asking you all the wrong questions and all the hard questions without acknowledging all the great success. It's there too.
They're great. They are great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
All right. School nutrition. Erin Dow. I'm glad to see you have no crutches
It's so
or.
good. I love it.
You could have skipped right up here. It was fantastic.
Becky and I bonded on a whole different level this year. But her Uggs are way better than mine were. So I guess kind of along the same lines as what I said in my department report earlier this year, the goal moving into next year is to continue the improvements to the program, the increases in participation, and just continue the momentum that we have. I ran some stats through February, mid-February, from the beginning of the year, last year and this year compared, which are on the chart that you received. And so I'm feeling good about where we are right now. I want to continue to improve it, and I want to get to a point where I feel like it's sustainable, and I think we're kind of getting there. So as you can see from what I submitted to you, the biggest request that I have in terms of dollar amount is staffing. But the numbers aren't as big as they may appear because we had a 15-hour-a-week position at the high school that we had an opening for this year. And I felt comfortable enough with where we were financially just in this fiscal year to be able to hire that position at 30 hours a week. That's been a huge difference for the staff at the high school. It's allowed my manager to get back to managing instead of scrambling. It's cut down on overtime for her because there are just some things that she's the only one that can do it. But I think the biggest shift I've seen is that she's become super creative, which I knew was in her. But to have the amount of time that she has, which is not a lot, don't get me wrong, but to be able to sit down and brainstorm new ideas. She's working with the manager at the middle school. They're collaborating. They did this on their own to kind of sync their menus up together to make the best use of the products that we're getting in from the USDA or bulk deals that we have on certain ingredients. And it's been really refreshing to see. And so at the middle school, I want to add a position there as well. We've had about 18% growth in meal sales over the last 2 years at the middle school. And I want to support that, and they are understaffed as it is. I mean, I think if you looked at a meal per worker hour staffing formula from the state, they might not agree. But I think for them to be putting out the quality of the food that they're putting out right now and seeing the impact on the increase in sales, we want to be able to support that. So what I did this year, and I think that addresses, was it Maura's question about getting some RSU 5 or Region 10 students in? I'm staffing that position this year, 15 hours a week with an RSU 10 student. So we needed a body in there to help with prep and dishes, and so we hired a Region 10 student who comes in 3 hours a day, does a great job, is probably a good candidate for the position if we do fund it for next year. And so those are that's the big ticket, is just the staffing. Let's see what else we got here. The other things that we want to do are some improvements to the safety. We have 2 serving lines right now that are operated with a cash register stand like this that goes out into the cafeteria, and it's all full of cords like this, and that just needs to go away. I've talked with Jim about it. It's not a big deal to switch to a wireless setup. It involves an extra software license that we have to get, and a nominal amount for the cart and the touch screen, so that's in there. We want to upgrade our serving line at Durham Community School. It's just, I don't know what the real word is for it, but it's a cluster when the kids are coming through the line and then they're trying to get their utensils and their napkins and condiments, and so we want to get an island set up there to keep the kids moving, because the quicker we can get them through, the more time they have to eat. And that's really important to me, to make sure that students are having enough time to take their meals. We're just looking to get some signage in to help with messaging, healthy eating, meal patterns, identifying the meal components in each meal that we're serving, which is a requirement by USDA rules, and that's kind of not been easy to do because we don't have a great place to do it anywhere. And I guess that's pretty much the gist of it. If anyone has any specific questions, I can answer them.
I always just want to thank you for your work. Reading the paper lately and the legislation that's been proposed where there are districts where apparently kids are being shamed for not paying their debts just makes me so sad. And to know that not only that's not happening here, but the work that your team is doing to reach out and help our community is just above and beyond, and I'm grateful.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, I want to thank you for the quality of the meals that are being served at RSU schools now. They have increased a ton, and obviously people are happy with what they're being served, so continue the good work, and that's great. And I also wanted to just point out that a lot of the increases that you describe apparently are not increases to the budget, because you have your own budget, so I want to make that distinction that all the hard work that you're doing is paying off, and you can actually fund all these new things that you need without asking for any money from us.
Yep.
And that's huge. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I will address the legislation that Maddie mentioned. There's an anti-food shaming bill that passed the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee today, so it's going to go to the full legislature, which prevents the shaming of students whose parents don't pay their bills. We don't do that. That's a policy for sure. One element in there that we do, as most districts do, is to at certain age groups notify students that they have negative balances so they can pass the message along to mom or dad. It's generally at the middle school and high school level. It's very discreet and it's not common, but the times that it happens most often is when a student wants to purchase an a la carte item and has a negative balance. So I'll have to I'm pretty sure this bill is going to pass, so I'll have to do a little finagling and to see how we can continue to enforce that rule that we have, which I think is an important one to protect the financial stability of the program. But other than that, we're in compliance with everything else in that bill, and I'm happy for that.
I'm just really curious what you added to the a la carte. That's a huge bump, 21%.
Oh, it's not that much. The a la carte revenue includes things like bottled water, seltzer, and things like that, iced tea and coffees at the high school level, and snacks. It also includes catering.
Oh, okay.
So we've done a ton of catering this year. It was mayhem before school started, and I really appreciate all the building administrators trusting in us to do it. It's worked out great, and I think that they would agree that it's very convenient, and it's a good source of revenue for us.
It also looks like the adult lunches went up too, so that must
big
be
time.
I'm guessing due to what you're serving.
Yeah, it's, I consider that to be, a kind of sentinel, a good sign that the quality is good.
Absolutely.
Because my kids, I don't give them a choice because I'm not making their lunch.
Right.
Yeah. So whatever they're serving, you're eating.
Right.
But I'll decide if I'm going to make my own lunch based on what they serve me. So
yeah.
I'm curious how reimbursable lunches can go up 8%, but the average meals per day is only 3%. How's that math work?
Let's look at your numbers. Which one are you talking about?
In the chart, the stats, it says reimbursable lunches went up 8.08%, but average meals per day for lunch only went up 3.3%.
The difference is that reimbursable meals are student meals, whereas average meals per day include adult meals. So if you have an increase in those, it'll show up in your total number of meals.
But they went up even more. That's fine. I was just curious. It's not a big.
It's one of those percentages of a percentage kind of things.
What does the reimbursable mean? Is that
a reimbursable meal is a meal that contains enough of a certain number of meal components to qualify for a reimbursement from the state for that meal served. So if a student goes through the line and takes a full meal with the milk, that's a reimbursable meal, and we log that as such, and so we get a subsidy from the state for those meals. A non-reimbursable meal would be an adult meal or an a la carte item, or maybe just 2 out of the 4 items that are required.
Okay, so reimbursable is different than the free and reduced lunch, because you're in addition to free and reduced lunch funding, you're getting on top of that an additional reimbursement for each meal you serve.
Exactly.
Okay.
Make sure I tell my kids to take the milk. I usually don't. Yeah.
They don't have to take the milk. As long as they take 3 items, they're fine.
Okay.
We have to offer it every day, though.
Interesting. I thought it was great, the goal of reducing the single-use utensils, especially as we're starting our new sustainability committee. I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about that.
I mean, it's a known fact that it's a goal of this district to do that, and I'm fully supportive of it. I don't think that it's possible to completely eliminate it because we have to rely on single-use items to be able to support student meals in situations where they are not able to sit down in a cafeteria. And that could mean anything from they need to grab it and go to their Region 10 classes to we have an early release day and there's not enough time to eat it. Or there might be a grab-and-go lunch at a certain school and they have to eat it in the classroom. And I mean, I'm working with each individual school already on certain initiatives. But I think that it's entirely possible to make another 25% reduction. And fortunately for me, it's easy to quantify because I can just look at my velocity reports from my distributor and I can tell you exactly how much we used.
Mm-hmm. So it's really expanding current practices.
Exactly.
25%.
Yep.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of your point about the sustainability committee. I think there's a lot of overlap with your department. I mean, you know, whether it's the composting of waste or whether it's the single use, or there's a lot I think that works with that. So hopefully, someone from maybe from your department would be interested in that committee.
Oh, I love committees.
You have until tomorrow. Yeah, right. You'll be in. Yeah. Any other questions for Aaron?
Oh, I wanted to address one other thing, which is, I guess, tangentially related to the budget, which is because of our because we joined the Greater Sebago Educational Alliance. One of the initiatives of that was to look at some food buying cooperative stuff, and I know that from past meetings I've attended that there were some concerns among the board, and I'm sure among taxpayers and parents that might hamstring our ability to kind of be independent in how we manage and operate our program. So I attended one of the annual meetings of the York Cumberland County Co-op, which is like 25 districts. Most of the Greater Sebago Educational Alliance schools are in it. They welcomed me with open arms, of course, because another district is better buying power for them. But what we've decided to do, at least at this point, is to pursue bidding on our milk and our paper and plastic products with that group. So that's going to satisfy the requirements of the agreement that we have with the Alliance. And it's likely that it'll also allow me to order off of their other ordering systems as well, which I'll only do if it saves us money. So I think if anything, it's going to give us more opportunities to kind of have variety in what we can choose and different price points to work with.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna jump over facilities and move right on to community programs.
Good evening. Thanks for giving me the chance to come and talk to you a little bit about the community programs operation and our budget for this year. So the good news and the bad news, I think, is that it's a little bit boring. I mean, we for the coming year, we're looking to sustain high quality in the programs that we offer in recreation, in childcare, and in adult education. Always with an eye toward innovation and having new offerings, finding the places where we can not just do better, but offer more or offer things that the members of the community really can use and want. We're also in one of those situations where our budget is separate from the process that a lot of that the schools use, for instance. We're sort of our own entity, and I'm really happy this year and that we're looking at keeping our local share flat from fiscal year 19. So our local share request is still $112,000. And so zero budget impact in the local share. So I think that sort of the boring nature, however, of this year's budget discussion belies some of the really exciting and good work that our office and our operation is accomplishing. And in adult education, particularly, I'm especially proud and excited about the program for new Mainers that's aimed at our English learners, and a lot of whom are from the immigrant populations. Our recreation program, we are on the verge, I think, of making an offer to a great candidate for a rec program assistant position that's been open for about a year, which will give us additional and deeper oversight and management of our recreation programs when we have this other person on board. And growth in our enrichment programs that really have some fun and useful opportunities and potential in the community. Clay just mentioned the NCAA event that we had in this room last night. That was really a great hit. Jim and his information technology team, they have weekly drop-in free of charge help desk hours that are available to the community. Not sure if folks have made use of that yet, but we're marketing it, and it's just a great value add. And they've also just finished the first of their technology classes. They had to learn to use the Google Suite class that was available. And how many people did you have take part in that? Man, we had six people take part in that in the first go-round. And then also our signature program, or looking to build a signature program in adventure and cultural travel and trips that can really make a difference in those enrichment classes and draw a bigger audience. So we've got some really exciting things going on, and we are sustaining ourselves based on the chargebacks that we have, and so there's not a whole lot there to offer you as new news, but I'd be happy to take any questions that you all have.
Thank you, Peter. So do you expect to have higher enrollments as a result of having charter buses instead of school buses?
Yeah, so we will. So we...
Yeah, I wouldn't go to Boston on a school bus. I would go on a charter. We don't even send our kids to Boston on a school bus.
Well, in speaking with Becky, in speaking with Becky about this, she did indicate that there was a little bit of a reaction among this group to the notion that we do some of these trips on school buses right now, and yeah, well, the fact is that for a lot of our trips, the demographic skews a little bit more on the experienced end of the scale, and so if you think about...
Wait, is he calling us old?
People who have had more opportunities over their lifetime to go on trips. That's all. That's all I'm suggesting. No, but if you think about, let's say the difference between a 30-something or a 70-something spending 2 hours on a school bus, that's a pretty big difference. So we do have an audience that we are looking to grow that knows about and really loves the trips and cultural travel opportunities that we offer. So they know about those and they love them now. And when they know that they're not going to have to be on a school bus and that we're going to have a charter bus for them, that's going to be extra attractive. And I think that they'll tell people in their circles, and that we will continue to grow the audience for this. So, one of the things that makes this possible, so I'm predicting that we might need about $25,000 to handle 5 or 6 trips in fiscal year 20 that would warrant a charter bus. And we, on these trips, if you compare what we offer to other organizations that offer similar opportunities, so for instance, Down East Magazine has trips that go up the coast, and they check out wineries, and they have a special dinner and arts performance and things like that. And their price point compared to what we are offering, I mean, we're offering this at a ridiculous value. And I think that it's safe to say that we could add, easily add a pretty fair percentage to those registration fees, and people would not blink at that. It would still be a great value. So we intend to pay for that $25,000 or so by changing the registration fee structure, and I think that we'll get there quite easily, frankly. Yes, so more people, more comfort, more excitement, and Kelly Park has done a really nice job of kind of staking our ground on this, putting the flag in the ground and saying this is going to be a signature program and we'll grow it. So that's our intention for next year.
Jeremy.
I think we talked in the past. Have you had the chance to build some roads between the youth sports programs and the middle school and the high school programs, and starting to get them on the same page regularly between the different programs?
Sure. Yes. Part of that, Jeremy, is I have a real close working relationship with Craig Sickles, and making sure that he knows and that I say to him regularly, hey, look, we want to make sure that our programs are open and accessible to high school, middle school coaches and their student athletes, frankly, for the chances that we have for overlap, for getting the high school athletes to coach teams or referee games or to be available at clinics that we do. So that has been happening. The most recent example I have of that is a baseball clinic, a Sunday morning baseball clinic that was run in the fall, where we had a bunch of the high school guys who were the camp counselors for that. And my goodness, the kids just love having access to the older boys, and the older guys get a lot out of working with the younger kids too. And those camp sessions always ended with about a 15 to 20 minute wiffle ball game at the end, where the high school guys were involved in the game, and it's magic. So each of the varsity coaches has a different degree of interest in being involved in sort of the younger levels and the recreation level. We don't want people involved in the recreational program to feel that that it's being taken over as a feeder necessarily, but I also feel pretty strongly that there's room for all of that, or both of those things, both of those tracks, the purely fun and recreational track and the hey, I want to be a varsity athlete someday track, to exist together, and it makes a really good program. So I'm committed to making those chances for crossover happen, and I think there is plenty of evidence that we're getting there.
Just want to give equal airtime, because I think something similar is happening in our drama programming.
So yes, there's a theater. I can't remember the date. It's one of the PLD days, right, or the half day, right? So there's going to be a theater camp that we're going to be offering, and so very similar sort of thing. So the younger kids will be able to spend that day in the FPAC under the wing of some of the high school theater folks, and so it'll be another nice crossover experience where they can learn from each other.
I just want to say you're doing a great job. I've heard nothing but fantastic things about how things are going down there. And as someone who, through the years, I've I learned to quilt 20 years ago, to get out of the house, to get away from my toddlers at the time. But one thing, for real, and I just finished a quilt yesterday. Like I'm
That you started 20 years ago?
No, another one.
Like, oh my God, I'm so not into this.
No, I'm still quilting.
Oh, okay.
And the woman who taught me back then is still doing the quilting class as well.
Yes.
But anyway, I got off the track there. One of the things that I think would be really interesting, and I don't know how you market this, but with all the stuff that's going on with technology and people being busy, and I remember a time for it was almost a full year that one of my daughters and I did all the cooking classes. I just signed us up for all of them because it was a time, for whatever reason I was feeling, I needed to spend a little more time with her. And I think that would be a cool thing to market, that those courses that are for adults could also be for some of our, kids, not young kids, obviously. I mean, especially cooking. But I just think it would be a neat way to give people an opportunity to think, oh, hey, I never thought of doing that, signing me and, my kid up. So
Yeah.
that's just a comment.
We thank you. We do have some programs and some actually that are in sort of the culinary world that are specifically designed for and marketed for parent and child combination. And there's one class, I'm not going to get the name right, so it is creating food in the shape of dragons. Okay, and so that. Not the title. There's something catchier than that. But Chris Toy is running that class, and he's got a big following. He's a Renaissance man, and we have two separate registration categories for that: adults and adults with a child. So so there are some places where we purposefully do that. But I think you're also maybe putting your finger right on something else, which is that our office, I think, can be a little more sophisticated and thoughtful about the way we market our programs. I think there's still a little bit of a gap between, hey, we've got this great idea and it's going to work, and the public awareness of that event. So so that's something we're still trying to solve. Yeah, great.
Belly.
Sorry.
Okay.
But I am aware you are doing that. The Arts and Cultural Alliance of Freeport is partnering with your organization for some different offerings as well. So I think from everything I hear, you're making great inroads to do more of that. So thank you.
Thanks. I hope so. And sometimes the wheels turn a little more slowly than we'd like them to, but slow but steady, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's interesting because that theater camp, I'm like, oh, my kid would love that. Oh, a cooking class, my kid would love. Like, how do I not know these things? I get it in the mail, I just don't read it. I am your problem. I'm sorry.
No, but I want to say I do read it, and sometimes my kids see
Show off.
courses. I'm getting
Cover
some
to
points,
cover.
so when I ask for something, I'll get it. No, but I want to say, when my kids pick it up, sometimes they go to the adult section and they'll see photography or things that they're interested in, but then they say, oh, but this is for adults.
Right.
So I totally see what Jen is saying there, that maybe some of those courses can be marketed for multiple age groups.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
But I also wanted to thank you for trying to increase the availability of recreational in sports for the 6th grade in particular, because they're the whole group where they're not getting enough rec stuff, or in the past they weren't, and they're not yet eligible for doing middle school sports.
That's right. Yeah.
So I really appreciate the effort that you're putting into that age group in particular, because they are in need, and the need is slowly being met.
Great. Well, it's been a really good learning opportunity for me in my time in this office since July, and spending time with Will Pidden and Ray Grogan particularly, and getting input from people like yourself about. Again, we want to be responsive to those calls for, hey, you know what? There's an opportunity here. There's a gap. There's a hole that can be filled, and people will benefit from it. And a lot of times it is middle schoolers in general, but 6th graders specifically. So we've been able to meet some of those needs, and we'll keep trying to do that.
I just wanted to add, I think it's so valuable, especially the two things you mentioned in particular with the new Mainers, and then also some of the programming that maybe reaches groups like seniors who aren't, maybe need that more engagement in our community. And so I feel that that's so valuable for community building and including those different groups. So
Great.
thank you for that.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Yeah, we also, I think this has been mentioned to this group previously, but next Thursday, week from tomorrow, at 5:30, right? Yeah, I believe it's 5:30 at the Bradley Room at the Community Service Center on Depot Street. It is on the one hand, it's a graduation ceremony for all of our adult learners who have achieved their high set completion and their high school equivalency. But it's also a celebration of all of our adult learners and the work that they do. And so I think we're going to have a great turnout from our English learners and people in the New Mainers program, where we've also had some really exciting news. We've had 2 or 3 of them that have passed their citizenship exams, and there's a lot more to citizenship exam than just doing the English classes, but we certainly have been a part of that success. And yeah, so next Thursday, if any of you are interested, please let me know, or just come on by, and love to have you there. Yeah, so there's a lot of really nice stories coming out of that program right now.
Congratulations. That sounds
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, thanks. And also, I just outing myself a little bit. Jim hasn't locked down Twitter in the internet here at school, and I was able to find out that the hockey team won 4-2 this evening. So, sorry, I was paying attention to everything that was going on. I was just. But
Jim's behind you, locking it down now.
Yes. Yeah. So they'll be in the quarterfinal in Lewiston on Saturday.
That's right. All right.
Okay.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I got to go back to my agenda here somewhere. New business, none. Personnel, none. Public comments. We, as usual, have run everyone out of the room. So I would take a motion to adjourn. Lindsay, Maddie, all those in favor?